Hello. I want to talk briefly about something that's kind of a bone of contention between fans of classic cult movies, and that is the idea of which is better, the Rocky Horror Picture Show or Phantom of the Paradise. Phantom of the Paradise, Brian DePalma's classic cult rock musical, was released in October 1974. It failed at the box office just as Rocky Horror did, except in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Why it hit so big in Winnipeg, I have no idea, but they love it. They have annual Phantom Palooza events where some of the stars will speak and sign autographs, and is very, very popular there still to this day. And that sort of saved the movie because people said basically it flopped miserably when it was released. Vincent Canby said it was unnecessary because to make a musical that parodied the rock industry because the rock industry was self-parodying, and a lot of other critics kind of said the same sort of thing. Um, and It would have died basically by the end of 1974 had not the peggers, as they call themselves, really glommed onto it, and they would watch it like 6, 7 times in a row. They'd start at noon on a Saturday and just watch it till like 8 o'clock at night, and that saved the film. And it twigged somebody in Fox to think, hey, maybe we should put this on the midnight circuit, and maybe the college kids would like it, and then it took off. Um, and the same kind of thing happened with Rocky Horror. Of course, there was a difference in that the Rocky Horror Picture Show was based on a stage play, The Rocky Horror Show, also written by Richard O'Brien, who plays Riff Raff, and directed by Jim Sharman, who was the director of the movie. It was only supposed to run for 3 weeks at the Court Theatre upstairs in London, and it caught on, and critics liked it. They thought it was great, and it kept going. They did a tour of Los Angeles, still with Tim Curry as Frankenfurter, and Richard O'Brien as Riff Raff, and Patricia O'Neill as Magenta, and Little Nell as Nell Campbell's her real name, as Columbia, and somebody different as Rocky. But again, there were it was pretty much the same. Again, people seemed to like it. It didn't do great, but it did well. They did a separate tour in Australia, which again did well, and also Mexico, where they had different people playing, and it was in Spanish, but again did fairly well. So Richard O'Brien and Jim Sharman went to Lou Adler at 20th Century Fox and said, hey, we want to make this into a movie. Are you interested? At first he wasn't, but they kind of convinced him and played the soundtracks, and he said, okay, I think this has enough traction, let's do it. But we want a couple of things changed. For one, we want a couple of Americans in it. We want Americans to play Brad and Janet, so they cast Barry Bostwick as Brad and Susan Sarandon as Janet. They also wanted to replace Tim Curry as Frankenfurter, and they were thinking of either Mick Jagger or David Bowie for the role. Both of them apparently auditioned, but Jim Sharman put his foot down and said, basically, look, either you hire Tim Curry as Frankenfurter, or we're not making this movie, and we'll just go back to England and you can smeg off. And so Lou Adler said, okay, you got Tim Curry, which is to all of our benefits since he did such a fantastic job in the role, and which led to a great career. And I'm very sorry to say that he's not doing well health-wise now. He had a stroke and is basically wheelchair bound. But my own involvement with these two cult classics started in 1978 when I was a senior in high school, and my friends took me to see the Rocky Horror Picture Show at the Fox Theater in Hackensack, New Jersey. It was a cold night and it was snowing, and we were standing outside at midnight waiting for the movie to start. I was excited, but I didn't know really anything about it. I hadn't really heard about the movie. I'd heard some of the songs because my friends had been playing the soundtrack in the car, but it didn't really mean anything to me because I hadn't seen the movie. I didn't know what it was about. I went, I saw it, I thought it was really one of the strangest things I've ever seen in my whole life. People were shouting lines back at the screen, and when someone said toast, they threw toast. The wedding scene, they threw rice, and when it started raining, they squirted water pistols. I thought that was fantastic. I'd never seen anything like that before. But I came out and I was kind of scratching my head. What was this I just watched? Was it supposed to be a parody? Was it a comedy? Was it a horror movie? Was it a science fiction farce? Was it a sex farce? or was it something that combined all of them? And I think it really was the combination that I finally decided was great. Um, and I liked it because it referenced a lot of the movies that I had loved, and which obviously Richard O'Brien loved too, that are in the song science fiction double feature, like Forbidden Planet and the Night of the Demon and old Claude Rains Invisible Man, and the old Buster Crab Flash Gordon series, which serials which were all funny, and When Worlds Collide, and all sorts of other, It Came from Outer Space, other great movies. I thought the difference between the two, as I experienced them, I saw Phantom of the Paradise after I had seen the Rocky Horror Picture Show, even though it was released before it, a year before. It played at the 8th Street Playhouse in Greenwich Village in New York, which is where we had started seeing the Rocky Horror Picture Show because it closed at the Fox. And it was introduced by Sal Piro, the guy who became the head of the International Rocky Horror Picture Show fan club. Great guy, very funny comedian too, and a terrific MC. He would get us all revved up to see it by doing like his comedy routines before and get us hilariously laughing. Unfortunately, he has passed away since. But the difference, as I said, I saw Phantom afterwards, and Phantom was a different animal altogether. Phantom of the Opera tells whereas, the Rocky Horror Picture Show is the story of Brad and Janet, two average American kids who their car breaks down and they have to go to the castle of Dr. Frank Anfurter, played by Tim Curry, to get help, and the hijinks that ensue therefrom. The story of Phantom of the Opera is much darker. It's about a rather hapless composer named Winslow Leach, who is playing at a club called the Majestic one night, and his music is heard by Swan, a notorious and very famous music producer who likes the music, and his associate Philbin, and I didn't realize this, he was named after Mary Philbin, who was in the 1925 Lon Chaney Jr. version, or Lon Chaney version, rather, of Phantom of the Opera. Says, you want that creep to open the paradise? He says, no, the music. Listen to the music. And he listens to it. He says, what do I do with him? He says, oh, you'll think of something. And what he thinks of is what spurs the rest of the movie. He tells him that Swan's going to produce his music, and he naively, Winslow hands over his quote-unquote cantata, which is a whole series of songs that tell the story of Faust, a German magician, alchemist, who traded his soul to the devil in return for knowledge and power. And Philbin doesn't really understand what that is, but he takes the music and says, I think we're going to make your first record for you, and you'll hear from us. And of course, he doesn't hear from him, so a month later he goes into Swan's office, and they kick him out. There's a Rolodex, and on the Rolodex it says, under Winslow Leach, it says, never to be seen. So he's ejected from the building. And then he tries to sneak into Swan's residence, which is called the Swanage, and he hears people singing a song from his cantata. He says, where'd you get that music? And Swan's Phoenix is played by the beautiful Jessica Harper in her first major role. Says, they're auditioning girls to sing in a backup choir. And he says, backup choir? I sing Faust alone, and Swan heard me sing it. And he tries to get in. Again, he gets thrown out. Phoenix is almost raped by Philbin, but she won't go along with it. He's got literally a casting couch where girls are thrown onto the couch. He jumps on them, and then two security guards throw him back over the back of the couch that the next girl is put on, which again I think is a comment on the way the music industry treated women at that time. He ends up he dresses up like a woman, and he's in this room where Swan has all these girls like making out with each other because it kind of turns him on. And then he comes in and he says, get this fag out of here. And he has him thrown out and beaten up, and two cops plant heroin on him. And the judge gives him a life sentence in Sing Sing, which is Ossining prison in New York. That's just what they call it, Sing Sing. And he goes there, and they remove all his teeth as part of a dental health program. They're replaced by chrome teeth. One day he hears, 6 months later, he hears the Juicy Fruit sing Faust, and it just drives him nuts. or they're singing a song called Upholstery, which is based on Faust. And he goes nuts. He kills the prison guard, and he jumps out in a toy box and is shipped back to New York City in this toy box. And he jumps out into the street, attacks Death Records, and he is smashing all these singles of Faust, and accidentally slips on one of the 45s that he was smashing. He's got a dynamite bomb. He's going to blow up the record press so they can't make any more copies. Part of his prison jacket gets caught on the switch. He slips, and his face is caught in the record press, and it closes on him, and he's horribly disfigured. Shot up by a security guard, jumps into the river, and they figure that's it, he's dead. Well, he's not. He comes back and becomes the Phantom. I won't ruin the rest of it for you, for those of you who haven't seen it. But it follows the Phantom of the Opera roughly, but it also has elements of Faust, elements of the picture of Dorian Gray, and a bit of the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, too, and some Frankenstein references. All of that is good. It's funny. The songs are done by Paul Williams, are fantastic. Williams does a terrific job as Swan, who's this really evil, smarmy character with a very dark secret. And there's great songs, terrific soundtrack. Though it has fewer songs than Rocky Horror, they're very good songs, and I like to listen to the soundtrack a lot, even today. Same with RHPS. Rocky Horror is a much shorter movie. It's actually only 102 minutes, which is basically an hour and 20 minutes. Phantom is 133 minutes. So it's considerably longer. It's also very much darker. There's a lot of murders. By my count, I believe the Phantom and/or Winslow kill 6 people before the end of the movie. In Rocky Horror, there's really only one, and that's Eddie, who in some ways deserved it, as his uncle, Dr. Scott, says in the end when Riff Raff says, I'm sorry about your nephew. And he says, yes, well, maybe it was for the best. Just kind of a strange line, but it works within the context of the movie. So the two are not really, comparable. They're apples and oranges as far as I'm concerned. Rocky Horror is a much more for the experience. It's the first audience participation movie that I ever saw. And here, like 300-400 times later, I still enjoy seeing it. I saw it here in Toronto a couple of years ago in a quote-unquote sing-along where they encouraged us to sing the songs, which I would have done anyway. I also like to stand up during the part of Rose Tint My World when Riff Raff sings Frank Enfurter, It's All Over. I love that bit. I know most people hate it, but I enjoy it. I won't sing for you. I'll spare you that. But, I think they're both great. I think, again, it's interesting that they both came out within a year of each other. Maybe that says something about the culture of the time, about musicals, about parodies, about the rock and roll industry. One of the things Richard O'Brien said was the reason that people like the songs and repeat them so much is they're not, Broadway musical songs. They're not these big sweeping things. They're all 3-chord rock songs. And that's why they've lasted so well. And I think he's right about that. One of the interesting things I found out about Phantom, and I didn't know this, there exists on archive.org a different cut of the film. Originally, Swan's music company was called Swan Song Enterprises. And the manager, Peter Grant, the manager of Led Zeppelin, threatened to sue Brian DePalma because he started Swan Song Records for Led Zeppelin about 4 months before the movie came out. And he started it in June 74. The Phantom came out in October 74. But even though it was completely finished, it was in the can, he insisted that DePalma and his editor, Paul Hirsch, go back and delete all references to Swan Song and Swan Song Enterprises from the movie. So they had to go in and, at the cost of $22,000, which Fox paid, they had to go in and basically paste over and delete. They didn't have, computer technology. They couldn't just do it with CGI. They had to actually physically or optically remove all of the signs that said Swan Song and or Swan Song Enterprise. A few of them are still visible in the theatrical release. For instance, when Winslow goes back to see Swan after it's been a month, he hasn't heard from him. Though the outside of the building, in the outside shot, it still says Swan Song Enterprises. And when he goes into the office, into the door and meets the secretary, played by Mary Margaret Amato, you can see the word Swan Song Enterprises stenciled in the glass backwards. But they cut the scene where she opens the Rolodex, and at the top of the Rolodex it said Swan Song, and it actually said the names of some more people, including Mick Jagger and Bob Dylan and Leonard Cohen, I think, are all in there. A lot of people in the music industry. And some people in the record industry, too, are listed on that Rolodex. So you don't get to see that in the theatrical cut. There's just a brief thing. You do see that the name Peter Fonda is below Winslow Leach. Also, when he pulls up, there is a street sign that says Swan Song Plaza and Death Drive, which I thought was great, because Death Records was always the record label in the movie. It wasn't Swan Song Records, but Death Records was Swan Song Enterprises, was the overarching company. Anyway, this Swan Song cut exists out on archive.org. If you're going to watch it, I recommend you only watch it. Do not download it. Do not burn it onto a DVD, because that might be illegal. It's not licensed. It's not official, but it's fantastic. I highly recommend watching it. There are a lot of different cuts. There's a lot more. It basically turns Swan into a much more menacing character because his name is on everything. It's on the marquee of the Majestic, where Winslow first plays. It's on the billboard of the Majestic. It's on every video camera that you see. It's on every box of records in Death Records, record press facility. It's on the record press itself, which is pressed into Winslow's face when he's crushed in the record press. His presence is, all over the entire film. And I think that gives him a much more menacing character. I think it's great. I highly recommend that you watch it, but as I said, just watch it. Don't try to download it or copy it. They even went to such an extent, and I didn't realize this, that they had to change the cover of the soundtrack album. You ever wonder why those two stars are flanking Paul Williams and Beef on the cover? They weren't stars to begin with. They were swans. And if you look on Amazon.com at the German release of the movie, you'll see what the original cover looked like. So they really, Peter Grant went overboard. He died in 1995. Swan Song Records went bankrupt in 1983. And I think that there should be, I thought there was, but apparently there isn't. I misunderstood something, but I think there should be a petition to release the Swan Song cut now. I don't see why, Robert Plant would object to the release of this song, since Led Zeppelin is deceased and Peter Grant is deceased, and it really makes a lot of difference. I found that it was a much better version of the movie than the theatrical release. So anyway, I love them both. I'll often find myself humming science fiction double feature for no reason on the street. I'll find myself humming for the hell of it, and other songs from Old Souls, and other songs from Phantom of the Paradise. As I said, apples and oranges, they're both terrific, and I don't like either one better than the other. I love them both, and I think you will too. Trust me.